Welcome to Backstage with Becca with special guest, Daniel Maldonado. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Backstage with Becca B. On this episode, this Rider University graduate who grew up in Queens and Long Island has been seen in the Moulin Rouge world premiere in Boston, Greece at Pittsburgh CLO, Arena Stage's production of Newsies, and recently made his Broadway debut in the hit show and Juliet, where he understudies Romeo. Please welcome Daniel Maldonado. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Very good, very good. I'm excited to talk to you. You've had another
me too.
year.
I'm very excited.
Broadway debut, and I mean,
It is.
oh, I just can't imagine how exciting that is. So
It's
I'm gonna
very
get
exciting.
to that
Very exciting.
for sure. So first of all, how have you been? I mean, we're kind of at that point where it's like 2020, where like we're trying to forget it, and the year without theater. How have you been? How did you get over like that huge obstacle in the road that was 2020?
It was definitely tough. Obviously the industry took a big hit, and I wasn't alone in this world that we had to now navigate as performers. Which was comforting in a way, but also, sad, especially once we were at the year mark and then the year and a half mark, and then but getting back into it was slow but necessary, I think, because I don't know how people would have. I mean, I didn't have this personal experience. I can't imagine the people who were on Broadway before the pandemic and then going back to the show after the pandemic, like going full force like that. Thankfully, I kind of eased myself into it with some, projects here and there, and then, a full-fledged production.
Ooh.
But yeah, it was tough. There's a lot of things that I had to, do. Definitely a lot of reconsideration. I wasn't, a lot of people ended up leaving the business during the pandemic. They took that as their sign to step away. And I definitely had that conversation with myself multiple times throughout the pandemic. I got my real estate license. I was serving. I was doing a lot of different things. Yeah, licensed real estate agent. And as the years continue, the months passed, like somewhere, I guess, around late 2021, early 2022, roughly, is when I realized that things were starting to come back. I was getting more auditions, and I did want to do that still. I wasn't done with theater, and the real estate and any other job that I did over the pandemic was not what I wanted to be doing, and there was nothing else I really felt compelled to do besides something within the arts, which helped me kind of light the fire back under my butt and get to work and get to where I am.
Yes, and I mean, how cool anyways to like get to during that break to get to like explore other options and like
Totally.
Because I know that everyone in the theater industry had to have been like, so I know there's like Broadway Plus and stuff, but like what do I do? I don't want to sit around because everyone wants to be up on stage performing and like dancing.
Oh,
and
of course.
You all are busy. You all like to be busy, I think.
Correct. Theater is not, it's not an online
Yeah.
it can be online, but it's not predominantly online. It needs to be experienced live. That's the whole thing, is live theater. Otherwise you'd watch movies and TV shows, so yeah.
So speaking of which, when did you realize that you wanted to be a theater performer?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh my goodness. Well, let me just text my fiance. She is watching Hunger Games, and it is
Oh, the Hunger Games?
loud.
Love that.
She'll get to it. Anyway, so I started performing. I was the first show I was involved in, and I say involved because I wasn't performing. I did as part of the set crew.
Ooh.
I was in 6th grade, And I had just moved to Long Island from Queens, and I never ever done where I lived in Queens. I never ever did. There was no theater program. There was no department or anything like that.
Oh,
I did see shows, but
yeah.
it was not even on my radar. Then I moved up to Long Island, and I was involved in my first production. I was too afraid to audition for it because I was like, no, I'm not putting myself out there. Why would I do that? And so I did the crew, and watching the show, I saw how much fun all of my classmates were having because it was like the big sixth grade production, and we had we had three different elementary schools that all came together to do this production. So it was like a whole big to do, and it looked so much fun, and people were made friends and whatever. So I was like, okay, you know what? Next year I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna chicken out. I'm just gonna go do it. And in seventh grade, I auditioned for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at my middle school,
Ooh.
and it changed my life. It really did. I fell in love with it immediately. I realized I was actually pretty okay at it. I mean, I say okay because I was in seventh grade, but absolutely
Yeah.
no training, never done it before. And I just loved the feeling of being on stage. And so every year since then, I was involved in every school production, well into high school, and then I decided to study it in college. Did many shows at my school there, my alma mater, and kind of just went off from there.
So I have a question because I have a family friend who's actually like in high school right now and she's terrified of auditioning. So what would you say to kids, whether they're in middle school or high school, who want to do theater but are like kind of scared of auditions and like kind of intimidated by the whole getting involved in the theater shows scene?
That's a really good question. I mean, the first thing I would say is you do need to ask yourself, is this something that I want to do? Because I always something that was told to me, which is very not told to me, but directly, but whatever, is the job of being an artist is auditioning.
Yes.
You spend most of your time auditioning, and then when you book a job, it's like the vacation. You don't have to worry about the audition anymore, but your job is auditioning. And it's totally normal to feel nervous, especially if you're still just starting out. You're still getting your legs, you're still figuring out what to do. And so you just need to be honest with yourself. Like, if you feel like these nerves are not getting, but you're not settling more into an audition, you're not recognizing that, I can do this. If I don't get the part I want, I don't care. Who cares? Then you need to sit down and be like, is this something I want to do? First and foremost. Then if you're like, you know what, even if I am nervous, I definitely really want to do this. You need to trust that you will always put your best foot forward, and you can only present what you can present. And if it's not what the person behind the table wants, it's okay, and you look at it as more of a performance opportunity rather than an audition. And I need this, I need to get this. So then you'll find your nerves, and also repetition. The more you audition, the less nervous you get. Obviously I still will get nervous in an audition, especially if it's a project that I really, really want to work on, or if it's, down to the final callback and it's a make or break moment, and, you start questioning everything you've ever done. But yeah, I would say you got to just keep going at it. If you find that it's not getting better, your nerves, or it's not, or maybe getting worse, have that conversation with yourself. Maybe, if I really want to do this, what can I do to change my perspective, or do I want to do this? Yeah.
Yeah, and confidence is such a hard thing, I feel like, especially in this and
It is.
especially
It
in theater when
absolutely
you're
is.
auditioning and you're like going in to either be told, yes, you're perfect for this show, or no, we're gonna go with someone else for this
Absolutely.
role.
It's a very vulnerable experience,
Yeah,
and one that no other job has.
right.
I would equate it to a job interview for anyone else. If you go into for a job interview at this major company that is going to pay you well, and you really want to get the job, it's similar. Of course, you're going to be nervous. Of course, nerves are a very normal human experience that everyone goes through, regardless whether it's an audition, a job interview, a sales pitch, or whatever the case it is. You just have to learn how to channel those nerves and use them for your advantage, because all
Yeah.
nervous energy is just energy, so if you learn how to channel it into a different way or a different mindset, rather than the nerves being for fear, the nerves can shift to excitement.
Honestly, when I'm doing job interviews, I'm just like, thank God no one's asking me to like sing or get up and dance because I
Yeah,
would be
yeah,
out.
exactly. And that's the thing. If you find that you can't, like, that's what makes you want to like throw up, is the idea of singing and dancing in front of other people and putting
Right.
yourself there in that way, then maybe this isn't for
Maybe,
you.
maybe behind the scenes.
Yeah, of course. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that too. We need our crew.
Yes. So growing up, how did you become a well-rounded performer? I know, speaking of auditioning, that colleges, when you start exploring colleges for musical theater, that's a huge audition process even of itself to get
Mhm,
into these programs. So
totally.
how did you prepare for that growing up?
So I did it all the wrong way. I had so much confidence in high school. I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread.
So good.
Um, because I was just, I don't know. Everyone says you're the when you're in high school and you go to college, it's like you're the big fish in a small pond, and now you're a big
Yes.
fish in the ocean. You know,
Yes.
which is very true. So I was very underprepared because I had decided to study this a little late. Most people, you decide what you want to do like sophomore, junior, which is ridiculous, but you kind of
It's
make that decision around junior year. Like, you should really solidify, okay, I definitely think I want to do this. So a lot of people know, okay, you have auditions, you have to pick these songs, which schools, you have to research, you have to do all this stuff. I decided um, a month before senior year started that I wanted to do this,
ooh,
which and those who know the college audition process, college auditions start
experiment.
in December.
Oh,
So, whereas a lot of other people have been practicing and, studying, doing whatever since the year prior, maybe even longer, and have been doing this their whole life and blah, blah, blah. I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I'll look it up. And my initial plan was to go into music education. And what actually made me make the switch, is because I looked up the audition process for music education, and I realized I was severely underqualified.
you're like,
Because you need to pick an instrument. So you can do, for music education, if you don't know, you
oh,
need to like find a medium that so whether it's voice or an instrument, you have to pick, you know, something like that. But if you're going in for voice, which is what I was going to do, you needed to have these four song styles selected, like one from the 15th century, 16th century, 17th century, things like that, all different languages.
oh my
I
God.
was like, and the first audition would have been in like November. And I was like,
You're like,
I
absolutely
can't do
not.
that. This is not what I want to do. So I made the decision. I was like, musical theater.
Ye-
Because I can find those songs. Like, how bad could that be? I can find two songs and a monologue or whatever. And I did it. And I picked 7 schools that were within 4 hours away from where I lived, because I didn't do any major research about what schools exist
Right.
outside of, kind of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Um, and I chose my 7 schools. I got very lucky. I started studying with a voice teacher, and he helped, but not in the way that I needed. Um, sang really overdone songs. Like, he didn't help me pick a song that, was special, unique, that really could have showed, whatever. Cracked left and right. I went into the dance calls thinking I was the best dancer ever. I saw all these other people and I was like, I can't dance.
You're like, wait.
I held my own. I didn't do horribly,
Yeah.
but and thankfully I got picked for my school, and I really cracked down on my training there. I was involved in as many dance classes as I could possibly get into. My voice teacher was a godsend. I got extremely lucky getting paired with him, and I learned a lot in my acting classes, which helped me go from like bare minimum to like a decent spot. And then my show experience and working with different directors and having that, real life experience helped me go, further in life from
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Well, you've done a lot of like very popular shows regionally. So how did college prepare you to go into the real world and do these shows at reputable theater companies, especially on the East Coast?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that college is, or university, it's important to have a degree in the United States, regardless. But in terms of theater, it's not for everyone. You don't have to get a degree in musical theater or acting or anything like that to be successful. And if it's just not in the cards financially for you, and you don't want to be in terrible debt, you can sorry, everyone's just deciding to text me right now at 2 o'clock. I was free all morning and now everyone's texting me.
You wait till now.
I know, truly. So I say find out if college is the right fit for you. And what I mean by that is if you think it's the right fit, you want to go, try it out for a year. And it's okay if like within that first year, within that first semester, you're like, this isn't for me,
You can
and
change,
you
yeah.
don't want to do it anymore. Yeah. Because the truth is you could move to New York City and take classes and audition and do things like that and make these connections early on for around the same price as what you're paying for a college.
Exactly.
Unless you can go to a college for like dirt cheap for musical theater, you don't, I wouldn't say you have to do it. I mean, if you can get a full ride to a school and you can study for free, go. Why?
Yeah, then
get your
absolutely.
degree, go study, do that. That's going to be your best option. But what college taught for me, and I definitely think I needed college, is it taught me how to be a professional. It taught me how serious the career is. Because I think beforehand, I thought it was just something really, really fun that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I was a high schooler, like everyone is when they are 18 years old and asked to sign their lives away to study one thing
for the rest of their life.
For the rest of their life. Correct.
Years old. It's
ridiculous. So I had, rose-colored lenses on, and college really opened my eyes to the reality of the business of like, okay, there are a lot of people. It is difficult. There are people that are more talented than you. There are people who look different than you. There are people who, and it's going to be a lot of work and you need to grind. Do you really want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? And after doing several shows at school, I still had that, feeling of like, I definitely want to do this. And what I loved even more is I felt myself improving, which was very helpful. And they did push you at my school. We were pushed to audition, especially for summer stocks and things like that. Not necessarily, they don't want us to miss school per se. Obviously, if something major comes along, they wouldn't hinder you from doing it. But they actively pushed you to audition for things for jobs over the summer. Which having that grind under your belts helped me realize, okay, yeah, this is what it is. I have to really
it's very serious.
Yeah. And then from there, you just then the rest is up to you. And it's so important to be kind. I think I owe a lot of where I'm at because of relationships I've made in the past. Not just kind, but also respectful. And respectful, I don't mean respectful in a way that like you have to like cower and to your superiors, but understand the other person's worth and make sure they understand your worth. That's the respect that goes back and forth. And yeah, being a good person, being a good worker. You don't want to be the person that's sitting in the corner complaining because you only have one line in the show. Or you're not a dancer and you were put in the ensemble to dance and you feel like you're not excelling and you're not doing whatever. Like if I was ever put in a position that I did not, I felt underqualified for, I worked my ass off to make sure I either did it right or faked it till I made it, and yeah, build those relationships and kind of, I took, everyone has a different experience in colleges, in classes in general. Not every class is for every person, and I think the most important thing if you go to school or if you take a class is even if you don't feel it's the right fit for you, you spent the money or you're spending the money.
So take advantage.
Find something in it that you can get out of it. If there's one thing that you can, like if you take a movement class and the teacher is a hack, Odds are there's going to be at least like one, maybe two things that you can get out of that class, even if it's something that you already knew, or you learned already. Why not take the time to strengthen that even more? So like it's like a beginner course or whatever, and you're just strengthening the knowledge that you already know. So you have that base you always have, now your base level goes from here to here because you strengthen that, that previous knowledge. If there's always something to, and honestly, even if the teacher is absolutely terrible and they don't know what they're talking about and whatever, you learn from observing other people. So you're in the class with other students, observe them, observe what they're doing, and that's what I did all the time. I had peers in my class that were amazing actors or incredible singers or incredible dancers. And I would watch them. How are they doing? I would ask them, how are you managing this? I can't happen to do this. And they, they're like, well, think that like in dancing, like doing a pirouette, they're like, remember, think down, whatever.
Wow.
In acting, you don't necessarily ask people how they do what they did in acting, but you observe, you watch, like, okay, what, and because acting is kind of mimicry, where we're creating, real life human experiences or, real life emotions. That's really what we're getting. And we're asked to mimic that.
Yeah.
And the best way to do it is by observing. Our job, part of our job is to watch people every single day and see how they behave, see how different people behave. So you can authentically play a person. So your acting class, even if the professor doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, which I've experienced that at my school 100%.
And you're like, am I really learning from them?
Exactly. But I can learn from my peers. I can learn, even if they were also learning and they weren't at their highest potential in that moment. I can watch and observe them go from this level to this level. Or I can watch them do something that I know was not the right choice. And I was like, I wouldn't do that. Maybe that works for you. You can keep on working on that, but I would have done something differently. I would have said that line differently, and then what you don't realize is you're building up your skill set by that too. So, and that's helped me kind of, move up in my skill set as well.
And I feel like it's a constant buildup, like from like even when you get to the Broadway stage now, I've heard people talking about like how they still learn every day.
Every single day I learn something. Because you never want to stay stagnant. You never want to get to a point where you say that I'm perfect. I don't need to, you can have that confidence. You can have that confidence of like, I'm in a really good spot. Like I know the work that I do, no matter what it is, it's going to be good, but it can always be better. You never want to just settle in where you're at with your skill set and talent and whatever. You can always improve.
Oh yes, and confidence is so important to have, honestly. So I feel like even if you're faking the confidence at first, fake it until you make it confidence is very good. So do you have a favorite regional show that you've done and why? And what do you think makes regional theater so special? Because I think it's really cool that like people can go see regional theater in their city and not have to travel to Broadway and get the same caliber of talent.
Totally. I would say that it's kind of a tie for two different reasons. So one would be Newsies at Arena Stage. It was just one of my favorite experiences. It was the first theater experience I had where I was challenged and pushed as an actor in a way that I had never been before. Especially with material that mostly, Newsies people think is just, it's a Disney show. There's not much, you do what's on the page and it works, But our director and the artistic director, Molly Smith, who is a godsend, who is sadly retiring this year. So people won't have the opportunity to work much with her in the future. But she is brilliant. And she had such a clear vision in her mind. She only hires people who are strong actors. She does not want to, you can have a great voice, you can have a terrible voice, but if you can act it, you're in. To be considered, And she pushes you. She asks the right questions. She knows how to get you to think differently. She lets you play still. She's not she doesn't micromanage or any way like that. And then on top of it, she created this environment amongst all of us that was so special to be a part of. Everyone in that show was there because they wanted to be there. They were happy to be there. They all felt like they got something out of it. We all felt challenged, and we became a family. We really did. I still keep in touch with a lot of people from that production. And it was one of the first times that I ever felt like, okay, wow, this is, because I had done Newsies once already, and I was at a summer stock, so we only had a week and a half to put the show together, which is not enough
Oh my
time
God.
to mount a show,
For
let alone
Newsies?
for Newsies. Yeah, about a week and
Oh
a half.
my God.
And that's not enough time to mount a show, let alone
Let alone
do
Newsies.
depth character work and figure out who you are and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to do a show like Newsies and take it seriously as though we were doing a Shakespeare show and approaching it like a play, I was like, this is different, and I really appreciate it. And it was one of the first times I felt I am an actor. Cool. And then the second one, it was very recently, last year. It was Next to Normal at
Oh,
Westport Country Playhouse, and that was just one of my favorite experiences because that show is just unbelievable, and our cast was also incredible. And I was working with some such amazingly talented people who just poured their heart and soul into the show, and we were all just with each other on this journey, which was very emotional for a lot of us. Diving into a lot of the subject matter was very difficult. Our director, Marco Santana, was incredible and wanted to give it take the show from a perspective of a family of color, and how that impacted, how that makes a difference, and how
the story.
people of color experience bipolar disorder and depression, and how we hide that sometimes, how we don't want people to know, how we try to fix it, how we try to,
Yeah.
and it was again another moment that I was like, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm an actor here.
I was
This
gonna
is the
say,
work that this is the work that we all strive to do, and we don't always get the time or the creative team that wants to do that, or the ability to sit down and do the in-depth work that I
yes,
think every show should do. I think every show should earn at least an extra week. If it takes you 3 weeks to mount the show, you should do 4 weeks of rehearsal, because that first week should always be for the actors to get to know each other, to talk about the show. Otherwise, you just jump in and everyone's making different choices, and they kind of just meld together into some product that works.
thing.
you know but yeah, those two would have to be my. And also Next to Normal was very special to me because I was supposed to do it in 2020, the spring of 2020, and it
So you
got
got
pushed
to do
back.
it.
Yes, it got pushed back 2 years, and we finally mounted the production last year, which was so special, and we got to do the full thing, and it was just a really magical time.
So like
But in
full
terms of
on.
regional theater, I always suggest doing auditioning for regional theater. You're more likely to run into nonprofit theater at regional theater, which is the way to go. I think all theater should be nonprofit, because the second you start adding money, you start losing what theater is about, and which is telling stories in a unique way, and it starts becoming more about the money, and you start getting shows that don't really offer anything besides surface value entertainment, which there's nothing wrong with that by any means, but sometimes it's special to do a project that means something to you as well as other people, even if it's something as simple as Newsies,
Yes.
and regional theater sometimes is some of the best. You'll see some of the best talent out there, and you'll see some of the best productions out there, because they are experimental. They want to do something different. It's the opportunity to do something that you wouldn't see on Broadway, or that you wouldn't see in New York City, and it also gives accessibility to people who don't live in New York City or can't afford to live in New York City. There's plenty of theater that you can do elsewhere. Basically, every major city in the United States has at least one regional theater or one nearby,
Like go to, yeah.
Yeah, that you can
Like
go
look
to.
up a show and be like, what are they putting on right now? Yeah.
Exactly. And what I mean, I feel like I grew the most and learned the most when doing my regional theater productions, doing the productions I did at regional theaters. Because as I said, I was allowed to be an actor, and I was asked the right questions, and I learned a whole lot doing those shows, way more than I would have sitting in a class, you know.
Yeah, you learn by doing, and
Mhm.
that's, I
Not
mean,
again,
that's
not to
how.
like shit on any classes or anything like that. Classes are just important, just as important, especially if you don't have access to regional theater. If you don't book a summer job
Yeah.
over 1 year, you take a class because you do want to keep yourself in practice. But if you do have the opportunity of being in a job, that's the best master class you
Oh,
could ever
oh yeah.
have.
And
Mhm.
I mean, I was gonna spin off that. It's cool that regional theaters will give like high school students in the area
Mhm.
opportunities to grow and learn from professionals in the industry who have already like experienced the industry, whether they've done one Broadway show or 10 Broadway shows.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also regional theater is a great way to live a happy life as an actor. I know several people who have never been on Broadway. I don't even think they have the interest of being on Broadway. They just kind of work, run regional theater
Yeah.
job to the next, to the next, to the next, and they are happy, they are thriving, they're doing well. That to me is what defines success in theater. Everyone thinks that, if you don't make it on Broadway, you're a failure, and that's absolutely not true. Anyone who's always asked me like, what do you want to do then with your life? I was like, my goal is not to, become rich and famous and win Oscars. Like obviously that's a goal. That would be something I'd love to do,
You're like,
but I'm
yes,
not
that's in my
going
mind.
to be, that's not why I'm doing this. I love what I do, and I want to be able to live a comfortable and happy life doing what I love to do. And
Yeah.
that to me is the most important thing. And there are other jobs outside of Broadway. So many other opportunities outside of Broadway. If you limit yourself to just Broadway, then you will be miserable fast because it's hard. It's not easy to get on Broadway.
Yes,
Um,
it's like if you limit yourself to like applying to just big companies for a regular job too, then
Correct.
you can't do that. You have to look at the small
Absolutely.
companies too. So I want to ask, speaking of Broadway, you have recently made your Broadway debut in one of arguably the most popular shows on Broadway currently. Everyone's talking about it here in LA, I know.
Oh my
All the
God.
theater people are talking about it here in LA. So and Juliet, what was your audition process like for the show? And were you aware of the hype that it has overseas in London before auditioning?
So I had heard about Aunt Juliet. Um, when was it? I want to say it was like towards the beginning of the pandemic. I think I stumbled across the TikTok when I first downloaded TikTok, and it showed something involving, or someone posted a video with the sound from like I think it was Domino or something from the
Oh my
West
God.
End. And I was like, what is this? This does not sound like, it doesn't sound like Glee, and it doesn't sound like, it's definitely not the original song. So I looked it up and I was like, what the heck is this? And I started looking, I was like, oh my God, there is a jukebox musical with songs that I grew up with. And at the time, it didn't have the hype that it does now. So I was just like, oh my God. I immediately texted my fiance. Um,
You
and I
started
was like,
the hype.
basically, I was like, do you know about this? This looks so silly. That was my first reaction, was like, this looks so silly, especially because we were at a time where jukebox musicals were just like being pumped out left and right, left and right. And a
Yes.
lot of them were not great. So I was like, oh God, I can't imagine this being, any better. And I had no idea. And then it was put to rest because of the pandemic, whatever, everything was shut down and whatnot. And then I get the audition. I hear the audition for it. And I was like, oh my God, I remember hearing about this. How interesting. Let's see. And I realized it was still running in London. And then I saw this whole following. I was like, holy shit, this must be good. This actually must be pretty good. Um, and so I got it. It was a self-tape appointment for Romeo, and
Ooh.
I send in my tapes and I don't hear back. So this is what I'm saying. Like you get no's all the time. I didn't hear back for 2 months. I sent it in November. I didn't hear anything. And then come like the beginning of January in the new year of 2022, um, I get a call from my agents saying they would like to see me they really liked me and they want to see me for the ensemble and covering some roles. So I was like, great, cool. So then I had to send in another tape, a dance tape. And then from there, so this is where like the weird hybrid was coming back in. You kind of started with the self-tape, then get called in for a callback. So then we had our final callback. I had a final callback after sending that tape in, where we learned another dance, and I had to do sides. And I was initially being considered for a Romeo cover and a Shakespeare cover.
Oh, wow.
And so I do that. And then the best part about my process, which I think every show at every theater should do this, especially when it comes down to final callbacks. Our director, Luke Shepard, basically interviewed us. After our, sides, he kept us in and said, was like, so thank you for doing that. I can see you did, you did your homework, you did work, blah, blah, blah. And then he would ask about something on our resume or talk to us just so he can get to know us and get our personalities.
Oh.
And I think that is very important because I can't tell you how many shows I've been a part of where people get cast because of their talent, which absolutely should be, but you don't realize that they are not good people, or they were putting up a facade the entire time in the audition process. You didn't get to know who they were. And so then personalities clash and things don't work out, and ends up becoming no matter how good the show is, sometimes you don't get along with the people in your cast, which still could have happened with our show 100%. Our director, is no way he could have known exactly if we all would have gotten along within 3 questions. But taking that extra step, you can at least feel a little more confident in knowing, oh, you know what, these people are actually pretty good people, and I can work with them. So if I can work with them, I can imagine that they can work with each other. And after that, I waited about a week and a half, and I got the call that I got the offer to be a swing. And it was a whirlwind. It was so exciting. Because then by that point I knew that the show was very successful in London.
You saw the following.
Yeah, I saw the following. Because I started stalking it, because as you do with any show that you book. And I saw how much people loved it. And I was like, oh my God, I hope this does really well. And we got into our first rehearsals and we did the read through, and I saw the talent that we had in our cast, and I was like, this show is going to be something really special. And I was laughing at some of the so many jokes. I mean, the first read through is always awkward because we don't know the show that well, where we can make these incredible choices that are hilarious and whatnot. But I remember the first run through that we did for Toronto, and I remember sitting and watching it and just being like, this show is really good.
Yes.
Who cares what I thought about 2-3 years ago when I first listened to 2 songs off the album? This show is good. It's witty, it has heart, the music is unbelievable, the arrangements work, it knows what it is, it's not trying to do anything. It's not like they're just trying to throw up a show with all of Max Martin's music and just so they can make money. They wanted to tell a story with this music, and they did, and it is amazing. And we had such great reception in Toronto, and we're getting such great reception here. And I just hope that it continues, because I do think this will go down in the books as one of the better or greater jukebox musicals.
Yeah.
And I think it's a diamond in the rough, because we've had a lot of not so good jukebox musicals come out. And I hope that this one gets its legs and continues to run as fast as it can.
I feel like it's creating a whole new name for jukebox musicals kind of in the world, and it's like it's going to inspire people to make jukebox musicals with stories that are that are super meaningful and can connect to real life.
Totally. And listen, the formula of a jukebox musical it's not perfect. These songs were not written to tell us, they were not written with the explicit, intent of telling a plot-driven story. But you can make them work as much as you can. And when I first saw this and I saw the reception, I remember saying to myself, I feel like this show is like a Mamma Mia for the new generation. And in more ways than one. I mean, Mamma Mia was ABBA's a Swedish pop band that came over. Max Martin is Swedish, and listened
Such a
to ABBA
connection.
growing up. And, I was like, the parallels are really crazy. Um, and the show is the way that Mamma Mia touched, the generations before us, because of music that they grew up listening to, and the story was cute and fun and bubbly and exciting. This is doing the exact same thing. It's cute, fun, bubbly, exciting. It still has heart, still makes you feel something, and it's all music for my generation and beyond. And I think it's going to hopefully stay a part of Broadway history.
I think it's also like a breath of fresh air for people like right after the pandemic and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. I would agree wholeheartedly. And also, it's always nice to have a breath of fresh air amongst a season of musicals that may have more drama-based stories. We are musical comedy versus a musical drama. We have an amazing show. Sweeney Todd is just opening up again, and that
yes.
has some funny moments, don't get me wrong, but
But
it is
definitely drama.
sure as heck not a comedy by any means. So it's nice to have that breath of fresh air. And you can see what I like about this season so far on Broadway is that we do actually have opposite ends of the spectrum. We have something that is made for entertainment purposes. It has which is our show. It's meant to just take you away from reality for a second and let you just have fun for a night. And then you have something that's going to be a little more thought provoking, a little more, intense maybe. And you have people who love all and everything in between.
Yes. And how do you prepare mentally to make your Broadway debut and also you cover multiple tracks in the show, I believe.
I do. I do.
So, I mean, and you cover some leads, which is pretty impressive. So, how do you prepare mentally for that and learn different tracks at the same time?
So I have to say, and this may be a little of a letdown for some people, but not even, I can't say it was a letdown. I think what helped a lot was that we did an out of town tryout for the show in Toronto. And what I mean was that it was a huge theater, gorgeous theater, beautiful amenities, like everything like that. But because it didn't have, and we have 3 Canadians in our show, so maybe performing at this theater was, because
Like
that's
huge for
like the
them.
big theater that they grew up going to. So that might have been, but like for me, I had done a lot of regional stuff. So, and I performed in theaters that were, equally beautiful, same stature, same level. So, I was like, okay, yeah, this is a regional theater. And it was fun. I had a blast in Toronto and it was amazing. But then when we go to Broadway, once we were in the theater, it didn't feel like I had left Toronto, you know? It took, like, I had to like remind myself that outside these doors is Times Square. This is Broadway. You're here. Like, remember that this is not just some another regional theater that you are performing in. This is Broadway. So, which again was very helpful because the pressure then was relieved. Like, even now when I go on stage or do whatever, like, it doesn't feel like I'm doing a Broadway show. It feels like I'm doing a show that I've just been doing since Toronto and for years. Whereas maybe had I just gone directly from rehearsals to a Broadway stage, yeah, it probably would be impactful a whole lot more. So in terms of preparation for that, for like making your Broadway debut, there's always moments. I still have moments now where I'm sitting, performing on stage. I'm like, wow, I'm on Broadway. This is pretty cool. And there were definitely moments, especially leading up to opening night. We had our legacy robe ceremony, and that was so emotionally charged.
I can
Because they
imagine.
have all the debuts come in the center, and he makes a whole speech. It was really, really amazing. And that was a moment that we were all able to like really relish in what was going on. And then, so in terms of swinging, yes, I do swing. I cover a total of 7 roles.
Wow.
That does include Romeo.
Romeo, yeah.
On the cover for. So there's 6 Romeo crew ensemble members, and I need to know, so I cover all 6 of them. And then Romeo as well. Now, in a pinch, I may be asked to also cover some Juliet crew,
Oh,
which I have done in Toronto. I didn't do their full track, but I would do like some set changes and maybe some songs as them as well, because I had 2 hours to learn it.
Yay.
So the limit technically would be 13 tracks, but the reality is, because there's 6 Romeo crew, 6 Juliet crew, the reality is I probably will not be going on for all 6 Juliet crew at once. All 6 Romeo crew. Sure, I will probably, I've already done 4 out of the 6 Romeo crew tracks. And so I just have 2 left to tackle. And once that's done, then I can go on for any of them at any point.
Oh my gosh.
And then plus Romeo. We've already had instances of that. Our other swing, one of our other swings, Michael Yvonne, who's incredible. They have been on for Juliet crew more than they've been on for
Romeo. Oh my God.
And they're amazing, and it's incredible. And with swinging, I mean, there's really no way to prepare for it. Everyone has a different method, and depends on who you ask. This is my second time swinging, and my first time I felt it was definitely overwhelming, because I felt like I had to learn everything all at once. And then I eventually settled into what I did with this show first, which is you learn 1 track at a time. The rehearsal period, you try to focus. During the rehearsal period, I would try to do like 2 tracks at the same time, because they stop, they go back, they stop, they go back, and you have the opportunity to see what this person's doing, what this person's doing, what this, and then once we start getting into tech and we start doing runs, then what you do is you need to follow 1 track. Once you feel comfortable with that track, you can write it down if you want to. Like I typed it all out on my computer, but I did that for formality's sake, because I'm not someone that can look at my notes in the computer and be like, oh yeah, I know exactly I can't do that. Because in the moment, what I'm typing may make sense, but then in practice, I'm like, I have no idea what that means. The best thing for me is videotaping it. I am a visual learner by all means, so I will record the entire show. And then when it's time for me to study a track, I go through and I can skim and I can go back and I can learn the track that way. Like, okay, this person goes here. What was their traffic? Who do they go in between? Got it. They go here, they end here, they're around this space. And then it's easier to learn 1 track at a time in that way. And then what's really awesome about our videotaping it, I mean, our show, we are very lucky because we have a stage management and deck management team that allows us to have our iPads like in our dressing room, in our dressing area in the back of the stage. So it's really helpful for me to have my iPad, and then as the show is going on, I know it, but it's just a refresher. It's like, okay, yes, they go here, they go here. So this way I'm not trying to remember the entire track from beginning to end. I can refer back to videos and be like, oh, right, it's here. Okay, yeah, it's here.
Yeah.
Great. I was right in that. And so that's kind of been my method now. And now I'm not, obviously I'll always be afraid to debut a new track because it's just scary. It's a new position on the stage that you're not used to being in. It's a new maybe direction that you're doing, maybe some new choreo that you haven't touched in months because someone's doing a little solo special thing in the corner that you haven't done yet and you want to practice it. So yeah, but it gets a little less scary once you go on for the first time. Once you go on for the first time and you've been on stage and you've been in the show and you can do it. No one died is the swing's favorite.
No one died is good.
No one died. It's truly a swing's favorite phrase. Then you feel that confidence that we talked about goes from like here to here immediately. Yes. You're like, okay, I know how the show flows. I know how my body fits into the show. It is not as scary as I thought. I did a good job with my work. And now I can just learn how I normally would want to learn.
I mean, and I feel like you can probably connect to other swings like while learning the process.
Absolutely.
Like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming and so stressful. Like I'm
Absolutely.
So Absolutely. You're like, I'm not nuts for feeling like this is overwhelming.
100%. Like this too. And I will say we got really lucky with this show. Our choreographer was really keeping us in mind when she choreographed this, because a lot of the show it's not like a show where there's there's 12 ensemble members and each of them are doing something different in one section, and it's choreographed what they're doing. So you need to know exactly what they're doing. There's moments of that, like very small little moments of that, but it's not like an entire song where they're all just like moving around stage and doing this. They create, like, the ensemble members created their own traffic, they created their own poses, they did all this, and the choreographer wants that exact same image. Like, that's
so fun.
That's scary. I've been a part of processes like that as a swing, where I was just like, whoa, okay.
Like, hold on.
So they basically went off and created their own thing, each ensemble member, and I expect to know what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of this choreography she comes from, Jennifer Weber comes from a commercial dance background. So a lot of it is pictures, and that's really helpful for a swings brain. So the hardest thing that we have to do is reversing choreography, maybe, rather than doing this to the left, we do it to the right. And knowing, oh my God. And just knowing, I'm going to turn this around, otherwise I'm going to, it's going to get me off track. And knowing where everyone is in the space. Is there still some things that are tricky, like traffic wise, and needed to know that? Absolutely. But there were moments even when Jen was like, okay, I got to think of the swings. Let's not do this crazy psychotic thing where, 3 of you are doing one thing, 2 of you are doing another thing, let's keep it uniform. And it looks great on stage. It's very effective.
Yes. And I've heard the traffic, speaking of traffic, is sometimes like the hardest part to navigate.
Absolutely is.
As a swing or as anyone in the cast.
We have, I don't know if you've seen the show, but
I haven't yet.
Okay. In the song Confident, there's one section where we have a turntable in the middle of the stage, and it turns slightly, and everyone is moving to a different spot as it's turning. So it's very like disorienting the first time you're on there, but once you do it once, you're okay. But there's one track that I cover, and he starts in one spot, right? And then he makes this huge, as it's turning, he makes this huge like circle around basically everyone, through bobbing and weaving between everyone, circling around to end up in the same spot he started in. So it's exciting to watch, because you think that everyone's like doing this whole big shift, but really everyone's just kind of shifting down, and he's just like bobbing and weaving. But yes, I say that because the traffic in that moment is insane. Okay, I go between these 2 people, but I don't go around this person, but I wait for this person to pass me, and then I go around them, and then I do this. So,
oh my God,
it's very much that, but it keeps it exciting too. It keeps you on your toe. It keeps you on your toes. And then again, once you do it once, twice, maybe even 3 times, it's in your brain. You have it like officially in your body. Your body knows it. Like that track, I learned that back in Toronto. And so I can do that track in my sleep now,
You're like, I didn't fall on the turntable then. So I didn't face plant on the turntable then. I can do it.
Exactly.
Love that. So I'm curious, learning Romeo, first of all, have you made your Romeo debut on Broadway? Second, how do you go about, I know it's a different Romeo and Juliet story than we're used to. How do you bring yourself to the character of this Romeo?
So I have made my Romeo debut. I did that back in November.
Ooh, holiday
pretty early on. Yes, pretty early on. I'm actually playing Romeo tonight. And it's very exciting. And it is a different story, and it's so different. It's basically a completely different story. We don't revisit the plot point of the original Romeo and Juliet. The show starts with Juliet not killing herself, not deciding not to kill herself, right? And that's where we start. So it's there's references to the original work, like maybe characters that were in the original work that were written in, or maybe plot points that happen, but it's a completely different story entirely. Just using characters from the show, from Romeo and Juliet. So we really had a lot of flexibility with how we got to play these characters. What was amazing though is our book writer, David Westreed, is was just brilliant. He's just a brilliant writer, and he knew how to tie in a 15th, 16th century, whenever Romeo and Juliet was written, and these characters, and tie them into a modern day world. And what I loved is that he wasn't afraid to just go be ridiculous with the script. So there's a lot of like ridiculous lines, but it's all purpose. Every line has a purpose. I can tell you that much. There was a lot of thought that was put into every single line of this show. Whether it was because he wrote it in iambic pentameter, some lines do that, or he wrote a rhyming couplet, or there's references to Shakespeare's life, like actual life. Everything, involving Shakespeare and Anne actually is all factual. Even the most ridiculous stuff that you may think was made up for the show, it's not.
You gotta throw this in because it's ridiculous.
Exactly. And again, what makes this jukebox musical stand out from others is how witty it is. We aren't afraid to. The show starts, we have a jukebox on stage, so we are not trying to hide the fact that we are a jukebox musical. We are not trying to pretend that we are anything other than what we are. So going back to the original question with how do you approach playing this character, I mean, knowing that the tone is just fun, I got to have a lot of fun. We all get to have a lot of fun. Everyone in this show has a blast doing this show, because we do get to be a little silly. We get to tap into our silly side. In rehearsals, we definitely had days where we went overly silly, and our director was like, okay, I like that, but let's try to keep it. And this is where the heart comes in, because when you tend to go overly silly, you might lose a little bit of the heart of the piece. So he did a great job in finding that line, that balance, where we can still be silly and have fun and make big choices and be, silly is really the best word, be silly, but also be honest and truthful and still tell the story, so it was just a lot of fun to just make big choices and not be afraid to make big choices. And that's kind of how we all approached it. We all just were like, F it, I'm gonna make a big choice. Let's go. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna wave my arm. I'm gonna burp. I don't know. And if it gets cut, it's cut. Yeah. The first time I ever did Romeo in the rehearsal room, I put on a full California accent.
Yeah.
And I talked to him. I was a surfer. And it stayed for a very long time until eventually it got cut. Because as they started reeling in more and more pieces of the show, they were like, you know what? I don't think you need this accent. And I was like, all right, that's fair. That's fair.
It's fair, but nah.
I know. Listen, there's still moments where I'll sneak it in a little bit here and there, depending on what I'm saying. But I decided, I was like, to me, which is very different than how Ben Jackson Walker does it. I think he approaches it very much like boy band style. Okay. Whereas to me, Romeo's a himbo. He's a frat boy. He's
well, complete sense.
To quote the show, he's a douche, but a lovable one. That's why I say himbo. You never want to paint your characters in a negative light. You always have to try to find the humanity in every person you play. But yeah, it's just a blast. It's a blast from beginning to end.
And I think audiences have been able to see like how much fun the cast has on stage and on both Broadway and in London, because I know that there's repeat audiences coming back like probably 3 times a week even.
So yeah, we definitely had some people come. We have a few repeat people.
Yeah. I mean, how would you convince people to come see this show on Broadway, whether they're like on a trip to New York or whether they live in New York?
That's a really good question. I mean, the sheer fact that we have a lot of our audiences have been coming simply from word of mouth, I feel like is a statement in and of itself. We have advertisements, don't get me wrong, but we are not like plastered all over New York City by any means, and we are still selling very, very well. And we have people that want to come that are loving it, that are coming back and, so happy. I always tell people, if you really just want to have a night where all you want to do is have fun, come see the show. If you want to have a fun night on Broadway, because it will be the most fun you have on Broadway, period. No
Yep.
matter where, no matter what show, it will be the most fun you will have for multiple reasons. You will laugh. You will be singing and dancing in your seat because you know all the music. You will you'll be dazzled by our set. And the costumes, it's very colorful, it's very bright. The lights, you feel like you're at a rock concert sometimes. It's very much in your face. The sound design, it envelops you. There are some songs with the bass, you just like you end up shaking a little bit because of how heavy the bass, but it gets you excited.
Yes, as it should.
And if you want to see, if you want to see a really clever show that it has something for everyone. Again, if you know nothing about Max Martin, you know nothing about these songs, but you know a lot about Shakespeare, there's a whole so many jokes for you there. There's theater kid jokes, there's everyday jokes, there's something truly for everyone. And yeah, I feel like it's a show that has something for everyone. And it's very clever, it's very witty, it's smart, and just a blast. I repeat that over and over again, but it's just a blast. If you want to have a blast on Broadway, go see it.
I mean, and it seems true. I haven't, as mentioned, I haven't seen the show yet, but from watching the behind the scenes clips on Instagram, Twitter, all over social media, it just seems bright and colorful and joyful and
It is. It's full of joy. And again, it's not like you're just, some people may say that it's a little fluff, but we do still have a lot of heart in it too. We have characters that, have a purpose, that, have a goal, that have wants and needs and desires that bring a lot of heart to the show. That you feel for. It's not all just like jokes, haha, it's not very, like the play that goes wrong where the sole purpose is to make you laugh because it's just one shtick after another. It's not that by any means. But it definitely is still funny.
yeah. I mean, there's clips all over. So I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen like little clips that people will post on
Mhm.
my timeline.
Oh, and
And
I'll say this, you will hear some of the best voices you've ever heard in your
oh
life.
yeah, the talent and
Lorna
the
Courtney
talent.
is unbelievable. If you don't get to catch Lorna as Juliet, her cover Rachel is unbelievable. Her
I
other
saw
covers,
regional
Veronica
in Texas.
and Kim Ona, are unbelievable. Betsy's incredible. Like, there's truly not a weak link in this show, in terms of vocal stealth, really.
Yes, and I mean, you can see that if you go look at the cast list on
Absolutely.
the website. Oh my god.
Absolutely.
I mean, I saw Rachel in a regional production of a show in Texas, so
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's
yeah,
incredible.
and she's so good. So before I wrap up, what is your favorite and Juliet song and why?
Okay.
Hard question.
I just did an Instagram questions thing and this got asked so much.
And you're
It's
like,
really hard to pick one. I have one for when I am going when I'm so I think I have three for three completely different reasons.
love that.
As Romeo, like when I'm going in as Romeo, my favorite song is One More Try. It's very beautiful. It was written for the show. So it is the only original song
God.
in the, yeah, we're not entirely full jukebox. We do have one original song that was written for the show. And it is one of the only moments that you, not one of the only moments, but we approached it as actors first. It's still a pop song, don't get me wrong. It's very much written like a pop song, but it has some heart for a plot-driven story. And it's just so beautiful, so well written. What's going on stage is so stunning to watch. It's they did a really good job at creating this magic that happens on stage, and it's um just a lot of fun to sing that song and just perform that song. when I go in for any ensemble track, my favorite song to perform is Blow.
Okay,
That is
yes.
just, I know
I
it's
can
different.
imagine it's fun.
It's a lot of fun. Again, it's the reveal that we have is very exciting. You know, like a curtain flies up and we're all like in this town. It's really awesome. And then the way the song is arranged is incredible, and the choreography for the song works. It kind of builds up on each other. It starts in this one way, and then my favorite moment is there's, you know, I don't want to give away too much, but it's all in the promo. Juliet's up on a chandelier, and
Just
we
magic.
all come together as the ensemble with Anne Hathaway, Juliet's friend May, and the nurse, and we all do the same move at the same time, and it's so exciting to watch this picture appear on stage. And it's like the final chorus where it's like everything is coming together. There's like all the harmonies are happening at once, and we all, I think, for one of the first times, really, we can look out at the audience and watch and see their full reactions to what's going on, and seeing everyone, like, because
That's
at this
so
point it's like 20-ish minutes into the show, like maybe 20-25 minutes into the show, so you really get to see how much they've been just
like
loving
enjoying the show so
their
far.
life. Yeah, and seeing like the magic of Broadway come together in that number. I feel
Yes.
like, because there's nothing like what gives me goosebumps every time I see a show. If there's a kick line in it, I'll get goosebumps. You know,
Like getting dancing in unison, like
exactly, because
doing
there's nothing like a big something
choreography.
as simple as like a. It doesn't even need to be a full like chorus line, kick line. It could be a step, kick, step, you know, whatever. When you do that and you all come together in unison, you come down stage. It gives me goosebumps, and I feel like that moment in Blow is when that happens, because everyone is coming together, we're all facing forward, and we are going to town, and it's
Yes.
amazing.
Everyone's living their best life probably too on
Yeah,
stage.
even if the audience hates it, like, don't tell me, because I feel like you guys are loving it because I'm loving it. So that's probably my favorite moment. There's a
Everyone
moment in Act 2
else.
that also was like that, but the entirety of Blow is like that for me. And then as an audience member watching, my favorite number is Show Me Love. And
Ooh.
it is, yeah, it's not the first one that people pick, because I think it's the one that people know the least. It's one of Max Martin's first songs. I actually think it is his first song that showed success back in 1995, sung by Robin. And what I love about this number is, while it doesn't necessarily, as in, you know, jukebox musicals, like the lyrics aren't necessarily driving the plot forward, but what it is doing is it's creating this feeling, which is what I think is brilliant. When I watch it, I don't care whether the lyrics are fully telling the story of what's going on and what's happening, and you know, driving that plot forward. The feeling I get while watching that moment is unbelievable, because the song is very much like that 90s bubblegum pop, and it's so colorful. It's there when they travel from Verona to Paris, and the set, you know, we have a lot of LED screens going across the back, and then when the carriage takes off, the screens like start traveling, and it's
Oh
so
my God.
lights are colorful, the
I love that
ensemble's
so much.
dancing. There's these little miniature like pop pieces that are going around on one of on our outer revolve. The carriage that the principals are on are in the middle revolve, spinning a different direction. Everything is so colorful. It really reminds me of like it's musical theater at its finest, which is
Yeah.
why I think I love it. I found it to be a really great marrying of pop music and musical theater.
Everything that you're
And it
doing.
just really works. It's just so full of joy. It's so, I can't, every time I watch it, I'm
You're
like a
like,
little kid. It makes me go back to like being a little kid watching a Broadway show again.
yes.
Especially once again when everyone comes together and does the same choreo at the same time. And it's simple choreo, like in practice, you know, you're not doing 10 backflips and you know, a quadruple pirouette, but watching everyone do it at the same time, and the orchestration, the way it builds up, the way it leads to those final moments of the song is just really, really special to watch. You go on a journey with the song, just as the characters are going on a journey, which is why that feeling you don't need, they could be singing la 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 the entire time, and I would know exactly what was going on.
Yes, yes. It's like
And
falling in love with theater all over again.
it is.
Someone.
It is. And it just works really well with the way they set it up with the placement in the song, what's going on stage, and the style, that 90s bubblegum pop, it all just works in that moment. And it's like, wow, this is awesome. And I love it.
90s.
Yeah. So that's why those three songs, all for separate reasons. I get the privilege of saying I have three favorite songs because I wear many, many hats. So I can say
all for great reasons too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all for reasons that are like, yes, I know exactly why he feels that way about the song or yeah. So what is your dream role, whether it's on Broadway or regional?
So dream role, that's tricky. There was a list at one point and it just slowly started dissipating. I think the one thing that remains on my list, my favorite musical of all time, is West Side Story. Ironically enough, another musical based around Romeo and Juliet. But it also is, I'm half Puerto Rican, so that speaks to me as well. It's my grandmother's favorite musical. We watched the movie all the time growing up, and it's one of the few media sources that celebrates Puerto Rican culture, not just generic Latina South American culture, but specifically Puerto Ricans. And I think my goal in life is finding a production somewhere where I could be the first Puerto Rican Tony. No one would need to know that I'm actually Puerto Rican, but I just love the score so much, and I love singing all of Tony's songs. Tony has some of the best songs in the show, and he's obviously one of the more fleshed out characters. And I don't know if I would want to be a jet per se. I would love to be Bernardo as well, but you die in at the end of Act 1. Spoiler if you haven't seen.
So it's kind of like I want to be in Act 2 though.
Yeah, you want to be able to tell the full story, and again, Bernardo's a great role, but it's we'll see. Honestly any role in West Side Story, but my goal is to be, if we're gonna say dream, I would love to be the first Puerto Rican Tony.
Yes. To happen. Oh my gosh, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's manifesting. Yeah,
manifesting right here, right now. So
that or Anita. But
yes, absolutely.
Maybe. We'll absolutely. But yeah, that would probably be my dream.
Yes. I was gonna say I could also maybe Orpheus vibes there. I don't know.
Oh yeah, see, I have yet to see Hadestown yet. I know, blasphemous of me. And I'm not a person that I don't usually like to listen to a cast album before seeing the show. I like to be surprised.
Listen before you see it. Yeah.
Yeah, especially because it's that cast album puts an idea of what it's supposed to sound like in your mind, and they obviously leave out a lot of key dialogue moments, because it's just for music purposes. So I haven't listened to it either. I know some songs, obviously we all know Wait for Me. But I haven't seen it yet. I have heard, that he just sings incredibly high. So, and that's what most people just equate. And they're like, you should play Orpheus. I was like, well, we'll see. But I know nothing about the show. I know the story, but so yeah.
Don't listen to the cast album before you see the show, for sure.
I won't. I haven't yet. It's the one that I stuck my guns at. The only time I did it was for Hamilton, because I really thought it was going to be impossible for me to see Hamilton. And then I did eventually get to see it. But I'm actually glad I did get to see it, because I found watching it live, depending on where you're sitting and who's performing and just, the day in general, it can be hard to hear or understand all the lyrics, which to me are the best parts of that show.
Yes. Yeah, you have to kind of like learn the lyrics first.
You do. So I was glad I listened to the album, because I was like, oh, okay, I know exactly what they're rapping about. So even if I can't quite hear it from my seat all the way back here, and
and like Rosie,
I know what they're talking about, and I'm still really excited, and I'm appreciating what I'm seeing, because I know the brilliance of what's actually going on.
Yes. So where can people follow you on social media to keep up with what you're doing, to find out when you're on for any track or Romeo.
Totally. I predominantly use Instagram. I used to have a Twitter. I don't anymore because I never use it and I never post anything on there anyway. Yeah, my Instagram is probably going to be the best, and it's Daniel J _ Maldonado. And I always post on my stories when I'm going on, and for how long and what days and what dates and for what roles typically. And I always make major posts about, jobs and things like that, where I'm performing, usually there as well.
Oh, love that. And I love that, like, speaking of like posting when you're going on, like, I love that that's now like a thing
Oh
that
yeah,
more like encouraged to do for understudies and swings is to post
absolutely.
when you're going on, because I feel like maybe even 5 years ago, I heard stories of like, oh, we're not allowed to post when we're going on as an understudy or a swing. And I'm like, why? I want to see understudies.
I know, and it does exist. I'm grateful to be a part of the show because our creative team from the very beginning has told us that, we are obsessed with understudies and covers. We chose you all specifically because we wanted you to bring who you were and what you can do to the table. We don't want you to be a carbon copy of the principals, proper. And we don't want, we want to see, we love when understudies go on because we love to see their take on the role. And while we will, reel them in when we need to, so that, for story and plot purposes, we will let them make their own choices. So what I do on stage, I mentioned before, what I do on stage as Romeo is going to be a completely different experience than what Ben does on stage, which will be a completely different experience as to what Brandon Antonio, who also covers Romeo, does on stage. Where you get to see 3 different Romeos. When you see a Juliet cover, you get to see 3 different Juliets, which is why people also end up coming back, because they want to see as many people as possible, because it is a completely different show when a different person is in the role.
Live theater, magical.
Theater. And it's celebrated, which is really important because, as you said, there are still shows that do this, and definitely a couple of years ago, it was always like looked down upon to see an understudy. People were upset. Oh, I didn't want to see an understudy. Why am I seeing the understudy? People have this idea that they are going to be worse than the principal, which is not true.
No, they come in and they're excited to play the role tonight, and they're going to give you something completely different, and they're going to put all the passion that they have into that role.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me to come on and chat today. I look forward to seeing you and Juliet on my next New York trip, which is hopefully soon. I think June at the latest.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be on. We'll see. It's Tony season, so who knows? Well, where we'll be at that point.
Yes.
But, yeah.
Fingers crossed. Thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give me a 5-star rating. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!